Hello, welcome to Classical Greek Latin. This is Latin lesson number 12 and it correlates to Wheelock chapter 11. And today we're going over personal pronouns, ego, tu, and is. All right, so you have our first person. Ego might be the most famous and well-known Latin word outside of Latin. And then you have ego, I, tu, second person, then is is going to be he. And we'll get into all this. Then we're also going to cover some demonstratives, is, and then idem. Okay? So my name is Josh, and I am the teacher for this course. So let's get started here. All right, so personal pronoun. I am not going to read all these paragraphs to you. A personal pronoun is... Okay, so there are a few kinds of pronouns. So the word pronoun, as they say, in place of the noun for pronomen, for the name, right? For the name literally is what it means, or for the noun. Pronoun is the word they're referring to, not personal, okay? So there are personal pronouns, which is like I is a personal pronoun, you, he is a personal pronoun because it refers to persons, okay? There are demonstrative pronouns which demonstrate or point something out, like we talked about. Hik, hike, hok, or ile, ila, ilud, right? This versus that. That's a demonstrative pronoun. And then we also, I've got a note down here, not to be confused with relative pronouns, which we have not covered yet. Those will come up on page 139, and that's going to be qui, quai, quod, not to distract you. But these are relative pronouns, and a relative pronoun relates back to an antecedent, or that is something that is before in the previous statement. Okay, I don't want you to get bogged down in that, but it's important somewhat to keep these terms separate from each other to avoid confusion, because I remember when I was a student, I would confuse them at times. All right, so you have personal pronouns, which we're doing today, I, you, he. Relative pronouns, which are coming in the future of this, in future lessons, and then demonstrative pronouns. So they're all pronouns. They're all for the name, right, or for the noun. And but there are different kinds of pronouns: personal, demonstrative, and relative. All right. So let's jump into personal pronouns today, then. All right. So like I said, a personal pronoun. It's personal because it relates to a person. All right. So you have your singular here in plural. So personal pronouns are like, they're for the noun, so they're going to behave like nouns insofar as they have case. They have case and they have number, but they do not have gender. So regular nouns will have gender, okay? So they have case, number, and gender. Pronouns, personal pronouns, do not have gender. Okay, so if I say ego, I, the speaker of this word ego in the nominative case, and here singular, it could be a man, it could be a woman, all right? And perhaps in fiction it could be an animal talking, so maybe an it, if you want to argue that. But the point is there's no gender because it depends on who it's referencing, okay? Same thing with the plural. Even more so, nos would be we. All right. So these charts, as you go on to another point here, so there's no gender with personal pronouns. All right. Until we get to the third person. Third person does have gender. Okay. We'll get to that in a second. First and second person do not have gender. All right. So these words are irregular. That is, there's not a clear method of memorizing the case endings, if you will, except from maybe the genitive singular that reminds us of the second declension, e or I in English ending, right? But otherwise, these just need to be memorized. So go ahead and do that. And note also in the genitive plural, I will point this out, okay? And we'll get to this again later. So nostrum, the ending, that's the genitive marker here. So that does come from the third declension, right? So that's familiar from the third declension. Nobis for the dative and ablative plural, okay? So to or for us, and then from us. If you, the obis here should remind you of ibus. The only thing that's similar there, or the same, is the consonants, the B and the S. The vowels are kind of jumbled up, but there's a correlation there. All right, there is a familiarity. So we have nobis, and in the third declension, we're familiar with seeing ibus for these cases in the plural. All right, so just some things to keep in mind. Again, nostrum, that's your genitive plural, so of us. And then also you have a second option. You don't see this option often. You don't see this often, but you have a second option for the genitive plural. Okay, nostri. Just for fun, my theory is that typically both the case and the number, that is it being plural, are communicated by the ending, right, of the case ending. But because the plural is sufficiently communicated in the nos, we already know we're talking about a plural here. It's my theory that nostri, the E there on the end, comes in by analogy to the genitive singular. That's not necessary to memorizing these charts. That is just my theory as to how that happened, how we got nostrum and nostri both being of us. All right. It's important to, yeah, it's not crucial to learning, but it's important to think that way. All right, let's flip the page. So that's first person, right? So ego, I, of me, to or for me is mihi, all right? And me, accusative and ablative singular are indistinguishable, or they're the same, however you want to say it. Let's flip the page. All right, so here we have second person, right? Personal pronouns, all right? Referring to the person again. And you're going to see some similarities here, especially in the accusative and ablative singular, te, and we had me for the first person, right? You note dative here is tb instead of mihi, right? And then tui is instead of me, right? But you have the I tacked onto the U there. As far as, as a side note, as far as pronouncing some of these words that are kind of weird, like is it tui or tui? I wouldn't stress that too much. Just make sure you're pronouncing each vowel consistently, one sound for each vowel, right? U, e, ui. And if you run that together quickly, it sounds we or ui, tui. So that's that. Okay. Treating it as one or two syllables will become more important if we get to some poetry later on. But all right, let's look at the plural here. So vos, similar to nos, except you have a V on the front, right? And then vestrum instead of nostrum. But you have the same thing here. You have two options for your genitive plural, and then note the third declension, genitive plural ending. The E here, I believe, is by analogy to the genitive singular. And then you have wobis, right? Instead of ibus, which we've seen in the third declension, and then wos. And then note also nos, wos. The nominative and accusative are the same. Or as to say, the accusative and the nominative are indistinguishable for the personal pronoun plural here. Okay? All right. So yeah, you just need to memorize those. Pretty straightforward. Write them out. That's what I did before getting ready for this lesson. Is I just wrote them out again to refresh myself. Very most effective way, I believe, to learning them. Just write them out until you can write them out without looking at your book. All right, third person personal pronoun. All right. So yeah, so it's third person, and this is personal pronoun, right? Because it's referring to a person. Just to drive that home again, okay? Let's look here. So So if you consider, they say the pattern is that of magnus aum. Yeah, it is. If you go to, especially if you go to the plural, right? Basically, the root of this word is A. That is the English letter E, right? You see it here. A, A. I won't bore you and go through the whole thing, but everything is going to be A. The only place you see where that is different is in the nominative singular masculine is, and then ed, which of course in the nominative singular neutered, which of course is going to be mirrored in the accusative singular neutered, right? But everything else is A. And then if you look down here at the plural, it literally is magnus aum, the same exact endings. You're right. So first and second declension, right? The feminine is the first declension, I, autumn, is, as, is. And then you have the second declension, e, autumn, is, os, is, right? And then a, autumn, is, a, is, right? For the neutered there. So plural's super easy to memorize. All you got to learn is an E. And then note here that you do have a double I. Sometimes in place of the A, you have EE. Okay, so be aware of that. They've underlined things that are different. Okay, and you remember from ile, ila, ilu, then he, kai, kok, the genitive and dative here should look familiar to you. All right, especially the genitive here, use. And then you have the same dative all the way through A. Okay, also keep in mind that's easily confused with the nominative plural here in the masculine, right? Whenever you look at a new chart, do this. Go through, find things that are the same as things you've learned in the past, things that are different, and then look for points of confusion, right? Just like that, the dative singular, there's no distinction between the dative singular and the nominative plural in the masculine, right? So in a sentence, that's going to create a moment of confusion until you can figure out the context. So as you memorize this, write it out again until you can write it out without looking at your book. And then, yeah, then we should be good there. All right, so let's see here. Is there anything? Yeah, for the pronunciation of Ayus, something like Ayus, I don't like getting bogged down in the whole is I consonant or is I a vowel. Just pronounce it as E, and your mouth will figure out the details. All right, so don't overthink that. Let's see here. That's about it. So we got another demonstrative coming up here, but let's make sure we're not missing anything here. All right, usage and translation. All right, since these pronouns are employed as substitutes, so we're talking about personal pronouns to be clear, right? So again, we had the first, second, and this was the third. So he or she or it, referring to a personal pronoun, okay? Since these personal pronouns are employed as substitutes, all right, substitutes for nouns, they are in general used as their corresponding nouns, which would be as subject, direct object, indirect object, and so on, right? That's why we can decline them. They have case because they're standing for, their pronouns, they're for the noun, for the name, okay? Anyone or anything that has a name can be referred to as with a personal pronoun, all right? Okay, even Fido the dog. Okay, let's look at these sentences and just read through these. I realize they give you the answers here, but ego, tibi, vobis, all right? So you have the singular, second person singular, second person plural, right? Datives, okay? This is unmistakably a dative. This could be ablative, but we're dealing with the dative here, so we know this is going to be dative also. Libros, there's our direct object, and then da, bo, future, bo, right? Bo, bis, bit, bimus, bitis, bunt. First person singular, future indicative active, I will give, right? And that explains why we're dealing with the dative, because we give things to the dative, right? So I will give, cherry pick this a little bit, the books to you singular or to you all plural, all right? Now, Wheelock will explain it in a minute, in a second here, that typically Romans would not be redundant with the subject of the verb and would let the verb communicate the subject entirely by itself. But we're learning ego, we're learning the personal pronouns, so we're going to be redundant just to help us understand what's going on with these. All right. Next one is ego ei, or ace. Right. Libros dabo. So here we have the third person singular, right? And this is going to be dative. So it's dative singular for a, and then dative plural here, right? And note that the dative, of course, incidentally does not have, it does have gender. Third person has gender. First and second person does not have gender. But the dative is indistinguishable, right? It's going to look the same for each gender, all right? So we'd have to just decide from context whether this person is a man, a woman, or an it, or the same thing with those people, right? So I, to or for him, or to or for them, the books I will give, right? So I will give the books to or for, to him, and then to them. Now you would not give for them typically. I'm just saying that because to or for is how you always translate a dative. If you translate a dative as to or for, it'll always make sense. All right, even if you have to smooth it out a little bit in English. All right, I think you get the idea there. Let's flip the page and take a look here. All right, so we got, oh, here we go, second person. All right, so tu, okay, so that's nominative singular, second person, no gender. First and second person have no gender, right? So you, all right, may, there's our direct object, okay? So this could be accusative, this could be ablative, right? Now nos can only be nominative or accusative, right? So we know that this is going to be accusative because we're dealing with accusative here in this section, right? So yeah, those are just things. You'll memorize these charts, but yeah. So may here could be accusative or ablative. Nos here could be nominative or accusative, right? And then it would be nobis if it were ablative. Okay, non capies, okay? So this is third io, capio, capere, right? So capies, so this is future, second person singular future, indicative active. You will capture, non, not capture, me, right? And there's the two because we're just being redundant here because we're just learning this, right? So you, me is the direct object, not you will capture, or us as the direct object, right? That's an interesting side note is in English, we distinguish the nominative and the accusative and the plural, first person plural. We see, or he saw us. But in Latin, they don't distinguish that. Nos, or vos, vos. Okay. Okay, so here we go. A, again, this could have been dative singular, right? Right, but we're going with context here, and also they give us the answer right there, how they want us to translate it. And also it matches the verb, third person plural, right? Okay, so mito, mitere, so this is third conjugation, so this is future, right? So they, it, now this is, id is going to be nominative singular, neutered, or nominative, or excuse me, or accusative singular, neutered, right? So this is going to be accusative most likely. So they, it, as the direct object, toward us, odd plus accusative, right? Odd always requires an accusative case, preposition plus accusative. So this nos could have been nominative, right? But then we would need a first person plural verb here. We have a third person plural, so that tells us that this is the subject and not the dative, and that this is going to be accusative to go with the odd, and that this is here is our direct object, right? So they will send it to or toward us, okay? This thing, it, to us. Very good. Okay, so go ahead and work through those. I won't bore you by doing all that for you. Note, however, that the Romans used the nominatives of the pronouns ego, to, etc. only when they wish to stress the subject. I mentioned this just a second ago. It's not typical that the Romans would be redundant like this, right? We already know it's second person singular. We don't have to say, use a second person personal pronoun to. We're doing that in these samples to help us learn the personal pronoun here. But you won't see this typically in Latin, okay? So that is to say, you typically will rarely see you'll rarely see the nominative form of the first and second person personal pronouns, okay? Because they'll be accounted for in the verb, right? And nominatives account for the subject of the verb. All right, I think that makes sense. All right, so commonly, therefore, the pronominal subject of a Latin verb is not indicated except by the verb's ending. Okay, and then here we have I shall double, right? There's no ego here. And then we have the dative plural here, right? I shall give to them the money. All right? Makes sense. All right, another point. Okay, cum means with. This is important, right? Sometimes it gets suffixed onto nobis, right? So cum requires ablative. So you have nobis, ablative plural. Also you have vobis, right? Nobis is first person, from us or with us. And then have vobis, from you or with you. I'm saying from because ablative is typically translated as from. And then we say with because that's what cum actually means, is with. Nothing complicated here. They're just saying sometimes cum preposition, pre-positioned, almost always pre-positioned words come before the word they are specifying. So that's why we have this note here, because this is breaking the rule. The preposition is coming post, right after. It's a post positive, right, preposition, if you will, to be kind of contradictory. Anyway, you tack it on to the end, just like you do with que sometimes. Que means and, right? Sometimes you tack que onto the end of the second word that is, like you have the first and the second word in a sentence. Let me write it out just to help you out here. I know it's not a complicated thing, but all right, let's say the puer and puela que, right? So the boy and girl, right? So the que is joining these two words together, but it's going on to the end of the second word. Similar things happening here. Cum is going on to the end of the word that it is specifying, right? With us. Okay, so you will find them there with us. So, all right, so you will find venio, venire, this is fourth conjugation, right? So future here, so you will find singular, future indicative active, the direct object, them, accusative, all right, accusative, plural, masculine, third person personal pronouns do have gender. So you will find them with us, EB there. All right, I think that makes sense. I got a star here. Let's find out what that's for. Okay, so we have, note also that the genitives of ego and tu, namely me, nostrum, nostri, tui, vestrum, vestri, were employed in constructions to be introduced later in the book and were not, this is important, hence the star, and were not used to indicate possession, okay, for which the Romans preferred instead to employ the possessive adjective you have already learned. Okay, this is important, again, because when I was a student, this was a point of confusion for me, all right? So you typically use the genitive to show possession, right? So you have me, of me, nostrum, of us, nostri, of us, tui, of you, singular, vestrum, vestri, of you all, plural, right? Typically you use a genitive to show possession, all right? What they're saying is the Romans almost unfailingly use the adjectives, which we've seen a lot of this up until now. Possessive adjectives. I guess you could call these personal adjectives, okay? But they decline, right? In the first and second declension, just like magnus, magna, magnum, right? And one thing, but yeah, you've seen these before, so keep that in mind. So, do they give an example here? They do give some samples down here, yeah. Right, pecuniam, my money. They're pretty, I don't know why they give so many examples, but yeah. They're not saying the money of me. They're not saying pecuniam mei. They're saying pecuniam meam. So this is my, and it's going to match pecuniam here, which is accusative singular feminine, accusative singular feminine, right? So that's how you show possession. All right. Another thing to keep in mind here is with vestra and noster, when you come to, these decline just like magnus, magna, magnum. So when you get to the genitive plural, it's going to be vestrorum, right? And then this is going to be nostrorum, all right? Nostrorum, okay? So that is of us, or our, of our as an adjective, right? And then of your, okay? Not to be confused with nostrum, nostri, which is of us. So let me flip the page so you can see this all at once. I'll just bring my trusty page over here. Okay, so you have vestrum, vestri, of us. Okay, and you have nostrum, nostri, of us. Okay, when you're showing possession, you have our. Okay, so it's of our. I think that makes sense. I hope that makes sense for you. But again, when I was a student learning these things, I'm still a student in a way, but that was a point of confusion. So I hope I cleared that up for you. If you have questions or need clarification, put that in the comments below, and I will respond to you as I can. Okay. So English usage is comparable, just as Latin says liber meus, not liber me. Okay. So English says my book, not the book of me. So third person. Okay, so third person, you are going to use the genitive, okay, to show possession. Okay, so note here, point of clarity, meus, tuus, noster, vester, that is first person, second person. All right. So to show possession in first or second person, you use the adjectives that they've given here, not the personal pronouns. Like ego, personal pronoun, tu, personal pronoun, right? Vos, nos, vos, personal pronouns. First and second person, okay? When you're showing possession in the first and second person, you don't use those personal pronouns, you use these adjectives. When you're showing possession for the third person, you do use the personal pronoun. Okay, and that's what they're showing here. Okay, the pecuniam of him. Okay, I've got some things crossed out here. Let me show you why. They say that it's better to translate it as his or her or its. When you see a genitive, translate it as of. That is going to make your life simple in Latin. Don't force English ideas or concepts into Latin, okay? When you see a genitive, translate it as of. So don't do this. Don't say his or her, its, or their, unless you're translating for people who don't understand Latin. If you're reading Latin for yourself in your mind, translate it as of. That is my advice. You may do as you please. I cannot control your thoughts, of course, but okay. Yeah, just translate it as of. All right, so the money Oh, let me jump down here so you can see. Okay, so I shall send, okay, mito mitere, third conjugation here. All right, so we have a future indicative active, first person singular. Okay, I shall send the money, okay, eius, of him or her or it, okay? Because eius, remember, genitive singular, you can't tell the difference in the gender, okay? Pecunium eorum, of them, okay? Their money, okay? All right, I think that makes sense. Okay, so first person, second person, second person, when you show possession, use the adjectives. Okay, not the personal pronouns like ego and tu and vos and nos and vos. Third person possession, use the personal pronoun is ea id, eius, or eorum, earum, eorum. Okay. If what I just said sounds confusing, rewind the video and then look at your chart while I say it. It'll make sense. Okay. The possessive pronominal adjectives of the first and second persons naturally agree with their noun and gender, number, and case. Okay. Again, to be redundant, the personal pronouns for the first and second person do not have gender. Okay, so, but for what we're talking about, the possessive pronominal adjectives, as all adjectives agree, okay, with their noun. All right, well, yeah, with their nouns, okay? The possessive genitives eius, eorum, earum, being pronouns, remain unchanged regardless of the gender, number, and case of the noun on which they depend. Okay, this is a good point. Remember, when you are using these adjectives, like meus, mea, meum, I'm going to go back to that for a second. Okay, pecunia is feminine, right? So when you're using the meus or tuus or noster or nostra or noster or wester, meam here is feminine. That doesn't tell us anything about the person it's referencing. It's feminine because it's matching pecunia, which is feminine. Right? All right. I think that makes sense. So when you're using the adjectival pronoun to show possession, the gender does not tell us anything about the person it's referencing, because the gender is matching the noun that it's modifying. All right. The third person, okay, the possessives of the third person personal pronoun, okay, especially now in singular you can't tell which gender it is because it's all eius. But when you get to the plural, eorum, earum, eorum for the neutered, it does tell us the gender of the people it's referring to, or the person it's referring. Well, the people, because it's going to be plural, right? The singular is indistinguishable for gender. That's an accident of grammar, right? In the plural, it tells us eorum, group of men, earum, of them, namely the women, right? Okay. Another star, let's see what it's there for. A last important reminder regarding possessive is the fact that Latin routinely omits them. This is true, except for emphasis or to avoid ambiguity. Okay? So we've come across this in some of our translations, right? Patriam amamus, right? So we love fatherland. Right. So, again, there's no definite articles either in Latin. So this could be, we love the fatherland, we love a fatherland, or we love our fatherland, right? But Latin frequently omits that possessive pronoun. Okay, so you have to supply it often, depending on context. Okay. All right. Yeah, put questions, comments, suggestions in the comments below if you need some clarity. All right. Is ea id. I'm going to try and go quickly here and not drag this out for the rest of the day. So let's see here. Okay, so is ea id. Okay, so they're saying it can be used not only as a personal pronoun, that it is for the name of a person, but it can be also used as a demonstrative. Okay, so let's look at two examples here, and then we'll skip on to the next section here. So, is est bonus, okay? Personal pronoun, right? Nominative, singular, masculine. He est bonus. Bonus is also nominative, singular, masculine. He is good, okay? That's is ea id being used as a personal pronoun. Is ea id being used as a demonstrative. Here we go. Is amicus est vir bonus. Okay, so he is how we would, well, would be our first instinct to translate it as he, but then we get to amicus, which he, friend. We know amicus is the nominative subject, us, singular, masculine. So that feels awkward. So he, friend. He, friend. Maybe if we had 8 in there, but we just have is amicus. So here it's acting as a demonstrative. This friend, right? So typically you would see hic here. Hic amicus est vir bonus. But sometimes the Latins will use the third person personal pronoun is ea id in that way. So is amicus est vir bonus. This friend is a good man. All right? Yeah, same thing here. You see her, no? Third person, personal pronoun, accusative singular feminine. You see this or that girl, right? And you can translate it as this or that. They're saying that because it implies distance, and if you see someone, typically they're at a distance, right? All right, let's go to idem, eadem, and idem. All right, we're going to go to the back of the book and look at a chart here. And so this just means the same, okay? So it's a demonstrative. Okay, so let's read this. The common demonstrative idem, eadem, idem, the same, man, woman, thing, is formed simply by adding dame directly to the forms of is, ea, id. Okay, so you're not really learning a new chart here. You're just adding dame onto what you've learned from is, ea, id, which is a third person personal pronoun, right? Okay, to the forms of is, ea, id, for example, eius dame, edem, and this is follows the rules very nicely. Besides the singular nominatives, idem for is dame, and idem rather than ed, they don't duplicate that d, or you would expect them to. The only forms not following this pattern exactly are those shown below, where the final m changes to n, which we actually do expect, and I'll remind you of why when we flip back to the chart here in a second. Before the dem suffix, for the full declension of idem, see this summarum on page 498. Okay, so here they've just shown what they're calling irregularities with the shift of that m to an n. Let's go look at page 498. All right, here we go. All right, so everything is as you would expect, all right? Just like the chart for is, ea, id that we've memorized. exactly the same here, except we're adding dame. Now, if you add is dame, okay, is is where we had originally here, then we added dame to it. The s drops out, which makes sense because s is behind the front teeth, as is d. So the s gets supplanted by the d because they're both in the upper dental region. Okay. Same thing here. You had a id, and then you had the, so you get another d. So they're just gonna, that other d is just gonna drop out. Okay, because you've got too much going on in the upper dental region, right? So those are strange things, but what we would expect. And then now it creates some ambiguity between the masculine and the neutered and the singular, nominative singular case, okay? But context will fix that for us when we come across it. Okay, and then we have eun dame, ean dame, and then idem. Okay, same thing happened here as in the nominative for the neutered. But let's look at the masculine and the feminine. All right, so we had eum and ean. Okay, m changes to a n. So is it's a labial nasal, but because your lips are sealed to make an m sound. When you also have to make a dental sound like d, you change that labial nasal to a dental nasal, also known as the letter N. So that's what happens there. Totally expected. And we've seen this before. Okay. Hunk, honk, hulk. Well, hulk is a different thing, but hunk, honk. Remember that from demonstratives because of that, the palatal. Little different there, but you have an M changing to an N for phonetic reasons. Okay, so that's that. And then you see the same thing from an M to an N shift there. Orum to orum. And then earum from earum because of the D. Same thing here. Okay. Pretty straightforward. We are almost done. Let's go back to where we were. Okay, and let's read my note here, or Wheelock's note that I have starred, just to make sure we're not missing anything important. Like other demonstratives, idem may function as an adjective or a pronoun. Okay, so euste mito. Okay, so here it's acting as a pronoun. Okay, it's acting as a personal pronoun to be clear, because we know there are relative pronouns and there are also demonstrative pronouns. Here we're talking about a personal pronoun. Okay, so I am sending the same men, eos, them, accusative, plural, masculine, the same men, not just them, namely men, but the same men. All right, personal pronoun. Now, adjective, let's look at the adjective sample here. De eadem ratione cogitabamus. Okay, we were thinking about de, the ablative thing. Okay, namely the reason. All right, they translated here as plan, which is fine. We get the word rationale from this, right? So they were thinking, de is preposition plus ablative. We have ea, singular, right? Ablative singular feminine. Ablative singular feminine from the third declension, ratione. This is basically first declension. All right, but here it's not acting as a personal pronoun. It's acting as an adjective. So the de here is going to ratione, right? The plan. They were thinking about the plan. The eadem is the adjective now matching that noun as the same plan, the same, what did I say? The same reason, same plan, right? Context will tell you how to translate it, but don't be distracted by that, right? So this is an adjective, the same plan, okay? Versus the personal pronoun use, all right, those same, the same men, I shouldn't say those necessarily, right, the same men, personal pronoun, okay, acting as the noun itself, not as the adjective as it is here, the same plan. Okay, I think you get the point. We are almost done. Let's look at vocab. I will let you read all this on your own. Something very cool here. Go, went, gone. Very fun to think about. English sample of what they're talking about in general here. But what they're talking about here is Nemo. Nemo's weird. That's why they give you, this is a very unusual entry. They give you each of the cases here for Nemo. Okay, Nemo means no one. If you remember when Odysseus put out the eye of the Cyclops, he told him that his name was Nemo. I cannot remember the word in Greek. Forgive me. So that when the Cyclops called for help and his friends asked him, who has hurt you? He said, no one has hurt me. Right? Wily Odysseus. Okay, but here's how you decline it. And they decline it all out for you. And it only appears in the singular. Because this is irregular. You wouldn't have figured this out on your own. Unless you were Mr. Wheelock. Okay? So Nemo, nominative, nullius. Okay? This is one of our 9 words, right? Unus nautus. Right? So nullius, genitive singular. Namini, dative singular. Name, accusative singular. And then nullo, ablative singular for the masculine. And then nulla, ablative singular for the feminine. Okay. Everything here could be masculine or feminine, except in the ablative. The ablative case does have a separate form for masculine and feminine. All right. There's outtime. I know they mentioned that up there. However, moreover. All right. I think that's it for today. And there's your exercises. Okay. Work through those. If you need help with those, we do provide the answers for those on our Patreon. The link for that is in the description below. It's $10 a month. And we'll go over all that for you. But work through those. Work through them slowly. Savor it. And then you have Sententia Antiquae. Real and live, wild Latin from the wild, right? From real text, not made up. So you have that. Goes on to the next page. And then as always, you have extra stuff here. Now, I do not provide translations of this here on Patreon. I can if I get enough demand for that. If I get enough patrons who would request that, I can start a tier for that. So let me know if you're interested in having me translate this with you. But if you like to translate on your own, knock yourself out. And then you have some more graffiti from ancient Rome. Right, and all this is just for fun. And etymology. Yeah, read through this. Yeah, this is very interesting stuff right here. All right, we are coming up on an hour, and yeah, our next lesson is going to be chapter 12, so that'll be lesson 13. Perfect active system. Okay, we're getting to the third principal part now, but that's for next time. Okay, so that is the personal pronoun. First, second, third person. Personal pronouns, ego, tu, is, ea, id, and the demonstratives, okay, is and idem. Okay, so yeah, we did personal pronouns today. We have learned demonstrative pronouns in the past, and previously, hitherto, we have learned demonstrative pronouns, he, kai, kok, ile, ila, ilud, right, and so on, iste, ista, istud. And we will, in chapters yet to come, learn the relative pronoun. But today we learned the personal pronoun. So keep those separate in your mind. Okay, yeah, my name is Josh, and I'm the teacher for this course. And I hope you found this helpful today. And I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.